Actually, you know what? Now that you've said that, Tippy,
Hold on, let me stop.
um,
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Tippy Talk. Today is Tuesday, March 23rd, and it is 10 a.m., kind of, in New York, or at least that's what they want us to know. And we're here today with Nathan A. Perez, and we're going to talk about networking to find a job and for a lot of other things. So if you're looking for a job, definitely stand by. You are going to get some information that may change your life. No, actually, I think it will change your life. And the thing that we're featuring today is called the 20-minute networking meeting. And if you want to hear more about it, you go to 20mm.com. And the reason I'm saying that is because I just heard it once yesterday and it's stuck in my brain. And when I came home and I wanted to look it up, I didn't have to go look for the name because it was so easy for me to remember. And I love that. I love when you talk to someone and you don't have to worry about looking everything up because it's all in your brain because it's just so easy to remember. So that's what we're going to talk about. And we're going to be talking about to Nathan A. Perez. Thank you, Nathan, for joining us.
oh, thanks for having me, Tippy.
I am really so happy and so excited that you're here. But before I start our conversation, I want to tell everybody a little bit about your background and your biography. And it's a little
Sure.
bit longer than I usually talk about, but I think it's important for people to know who you are, where you're coming from, so that when you talk, they know where it's coming from. So
Sure.
you have a long biography here, and I'm going to read everything because I think everything is important. So Nathan A. Perez is an award-winning author, a national speaker, and an executive career and job search coach at Career Innovation. And I think that he considers himself a hardwired introvert. And I'm saying that because for a reason, and you'll see in a minute why. So, coming from an unusually unique and diverse professional background himself, Nathan brings to his clients a rare viewpoint on networking, job search and career development, and a formerly trained actor with a BFA in theater. Nathan has 20-year career in the arts and was supported by simultaneously developing a business career which involved an inordinate amount of resumes, networking, meetings, and interviews in multiple businesses and industries. Utilizing the background, Nathan ties together his deep live audience experience with almost 15 years in the executive search industry, delivering dozens of webinars, seminars, and guest speaking engagement each year on the topics of networking, job search, and career development. And it is kind of typical for people who come to a city to be an actor to have a part-time job. And it looks like with Nathan, what he did is he used his job and his career as an actor to combine together two careers that I think is a really powerful thing. Because most people I know that come to be actors, they become waitresses until their career and they don't really incorporate both. And that's in itself really, really powerful. So prior to his work as an executive career coach, Nathan held the title of Vice President of Research in the retained search industry, where he was responsible for the first step of the executive recruitment process, devising strategies of where and how to find qualified candidates for all national and global search engagement. So, in short, he would be finding candidates for the recruiters to recruit. Do you understand why, if you want a job or upgrade your job, this is very important for you to listen to? So, consequently, networking was and continues to be a day to day function of his job. As a result, and because of his combined professional expertise, Nathan regularly works with professionals from all different backgrounds and experience levels. And that includes everyone from Hollywood movie stars to producers to sound engineers to fashion designers and new college grads, even nonprofit and civic leaders, veterans, and global executives. He's been cited by the Huffington Post as one of the most connected people on LinkedIn worldwide. Nathan is a member of the Actors Equity Association Union, which is called AEA. He's a voting union member of the Screen Actors Guild, SAG, and AFTRA, which is actually a union for authors. What else is really important here? He's an honorary commander with the 934th Airlift Wing U.S. Air Force Reserve, home of the Global Viking. And you can read more about his background at nathanaperez.com. And you just go to the About page and you will hear all about it. Now, I mentioned that you consider yourself a hardwired introvert. And that really seems like a contradiction. How can you be an introvert and be a public speaker and networking and being with so many people? Usually introverts are more isolated than that. Isn't that true?
Yeah, but I also think that's maybe just a little bit of a perception. Maybe actually to kind of put this in perspective, let's define what those things mean first, right? So an extrovert is someone who recharges and they get all their energy when they've been around people or big groups of people. And by contrast, an introvert is defined as someone who recharges and they get their energy when they've had a sufficient amount of time to self-reflect. And I certainly fall in that category. And there's the perception, especially, I'm a formally trained actor. I did this stuff for 20 years, commercials and film and television, print. I spent a lot of time working in front of and working with audiences, but it doesn't change the definition of who we really are. And when it comes to this networking thing, and this networking thing I've been doing through my entire career in the arts and also in the professional world, it's just the networking thing is just a skill in the end. And it's a skill that anybody can learn. And that's just something that I learned over the course of time, but just by way of conversations.
So I think you're right. Networking is something that can really change your life. And that's why I think if someone is looking for a job or looking to improve their life in any capacity, your work, the 20-minute networking meetings, is such a simple yet profound life changing, because I don't really think that there's anything in life that you cannot do better with networking, right?
You're right. Yeah, you're absolutely right. Networking it isn't. So we're talking about it around career development and job search, but networking is arguably the most important skill to have in all of business because it touches every single aspect of business. But when it comes to career and job search, it's especially important. There's a statistic from the U.S. Bureau of Labor of Statistics that between 70 and 80% of all jobs, regardless of the industry or the business, of all jobs are obtained through the people that we know. And the people that we know make up our network. Now, I say this a lot and I use that statistic a lot because it's so important, but we hear statistics a lot. So here's a different way of looking at the same thing. Between 70 and 80% of all jobs are not posted. Okay, 70 to 80% of all jobs are not posted. And what that means is the other 20 to 30% that are posted are available to your competition. And so if you've ever had an experience where you think, oh my gosh, I can't get an interview, I can't even get a phone call, this is why. And what it does is it makes up what's called the invisible or the hidden job market. It sounds kind of strange, but it's a real thing. It exists and it's a real thing. And the way that it works is by word of mouth. And of course, word of mouth is all about networking. So if 70 to 80% of all jobs are not posted, and that's where most of the jobs are filled, especially when it comes to career development and job search, this is the skill that you must have. If you ever work with a career coach or a job search coach or, like a city or a government workforce, this is the topic that everybody goes to. They'll help you with your resume and they'll help you with your interview skills and they'll help you even maybe who it is you might be meeting with, but they're going to tell you, you've got to learn how to network and get out there and make new relationships that's going to make headway for you to land your next job.
So networking is kind of a scary thing for most people. And I think that's one of the reasons that a lot of people stay away from it. Is networking easier for you since you have this natural ability to fall into a natural step in a conversation with people? It seems like it comes like second nature to you. And but most people are very intimidated and they're afraid of networking. So how do they?
That's true.
Mhm.
Yeah, well, it's true. Most people do find it intimidating because, and again, this is, I just used this word a second ago, it's a perception thing. I think what happens is most people sort of think that networking is supposed to be this, that, or the other. And most of this, that, and the other is stuff that we want to avoid. So, networking, in other words, has sort of this negative connotation. And what happens is people start to pin behaviors to the word. So, people think that networking is supposed to be slick and smooth, or, you got to drop some names, or you have to be salesy, or you're the kind of guy that goes and works the room. And when we think about that, we don't want to be that person. We don't want to do those things. And people end up avoiding networking, thinking that that's what networking is. Um, but the thing is, we can maybe talk about real quick what networking is not. And what networking is not is those things, being slick and smooth or dropping names or being salesy and so forth. And what networking really is just about information gathering and information exchange. And when you think about it that way, then you realize that every single discussion that you ever have, every one is exactly that. It's information exchange and information gathering. And so, for example, just as simple as, "Hey, good morning, Tippy. How was your morning this morning?" And you say, "It's pretty good, Nathan. I went and got some coffee at the coffee shop. I got a donut and drove into work, hit some traffic." That's all information that you're giving me.
Right.
And we do this every single day, and then I could start asking you questions from there. "Oh, what road were you on? What kind of coffee did you get? What coffee shop did you go to?" And then you tell me that. And I'm learning all these things about you, maybe about the coffee shop and what road to avoid in the morning. But I'm just gathering this information and using it. That's all networking really is. So when you think about it that way, it probably shouldn't be intimidating at all, because it's something that is normal and something that we're doing day to day all the time.
That's a great definition. So you're saying that networking basically means exchange information, exchange conversations. So I could be networking with the bus driver, or I could be networking with someone getting coffee. Because in my mind, when you say the word networking, and I think in a lot of people's mind, I see myself sitting with a bunch of strangers trying
Mm.
to tell them things about myself that they probably don't want to know. And that's very intimidating.
Yeah, right. That's exactly it. So, like, what you were referring to are sort of are networking events, or maybe even social events, like, there's the holiday work party, or there's a barbecue, that kind of thing. And we think that's where we're supposed to be networking. But here's this take, for example, we'll use the bus driver as the example. Let's just say it's an empty bus and you're chatting with the bus driver, and you're someone who is a heavy equipment operator, and you're looking for a job, and you ask the bus driver, "What class driver's license do you have to have as a bus driver?" I work heavy equipment. You kind of have to have these licenses, and he or she tells you and gives you that sort of information. But just imagine now that you're at a networking event or barbecue, and you see the same person. Now you're in different circumstances, different location, but it's the same person. It could be the same information, in which you ask the same questions, you get that info back from them, and you're still learning. It is still networking. So networking events. Now there's an upside to networking events, and that is, it's great news. Everybody else that is there for the same purpose. So you don't really have to feel uncomfortable, because everyone there is hoping to do the same thing you are, which is talk and exchange that information.
Yes, that's true. But the perception is what I like that you changed. You literally changed my perception in 25 seconds, because If I don't, if it's not what I thought it was, and if it is an exchange of information, to me, that's not intimidating. Hi, how are you? What's your name? An exchange of information. That's an easy thing to do. It doesn't have to
Yeah.
be this networking events. So is that what the 20-minute networking meeting, is that basically more of information about what is networking or how to network, how to have conversation? Like, what specifically does 20-minute networking meeting mean?
Right. It is literally a process, and I'll explain the process. So the title of the book is The 20-Minute Networking Meeting: Learn to Network, Get a Job. And these books are designed specifically for that. It gives you 5 steps. Would you like me to cover those 5 steps really quick?
Sure.
Okay, so there are 5 steps to the meeting, and the thing is that there are many different purposes for networking. There are many different outcomes, but again, right, it's just about information exchange, and you can do this virtually, especially these days, right? We're all using video. You can do this over the phone. Of course, you can do this in person, which is what you prefer. But the first step of a meeting would be a great first impression of you. Okay, and that just takes like a couple of minutes, and each one of these steps that I'm listing out actually has a time limit to it. This is what helps you keep it to 20 minutes. It can go longer, it can go shorter, but this is just a general outline. So a great first impression of you, and then it's followed by a 30 to 60 snapshot of your professional background. Okay. And the reason that this is so important, this is key for anybody going into networking meetings or into an interview. What you're really doing by giving that 30 to 60-second snapshot is you're preserving most of the time for your great discussion, which is the next step. And you're also providing context for that discussion. So that's step number 2. And this is all structured out, right? The way that you go about structuring that background. Step number 3 is the great discussion. And this is the bulk of your meeting. It's about 12 to 15 minutes long. And the way that it's broken down is that there are 5 key questions that you want to ask of your contact. I'll talk about the first 3, and then I'll hit the 4th and the 5th. The first 3 are specifically formulated for that person. And what you're hoping to do is kind of gain the unique wisdom or knowledge that perhaps only that person could give you. So, for example, like we read lots of blog posts, and we can read books and magazine articles and listen to podcasts and all these things. But what we're doing as we go through all that materials, we're kind of trying to piecemeal an understanding of what it is that we're looking for. But when you're networking with somebody, it's like a shortcut, because you're networking with people who might already be sitting in that kind of position or know a lot about that position. And instead of trying to glean information like you would on a blog post or podcast, you're getting it directly for that person. So you're hoping to develop questions that are specific to them. So that would be questions 1 through 3. The 4th question, and this is what kind of freaks people out, especially with the networking thing, and yet it's a major objective of your overall networking. Your 4th question is about getting more names, more people to network with. And people, again, oh gosh, it was already hard to ask for the meeting, or it's going to be embarrassing. People don't want to do that. And, sometimes those things are true. But we have to remember, too, that if someone said yes to your networking meeting, it's because they wanted to help you. So they're likely to help you with these names. Plus, it's a networking meeting. People expect to be asked this question in a meeting. And also, people ask this question all the time in all businesses and all industries that are out there. So it's not something to really worry about. And especially when you run a structured meeting like this, when you get to this point in the meeting, it makes a lot of sense for you and for the other person that you would ask this question, so you can feel confident. Then question number 5, and this is the really big one. So if question number 4 throws us as the networker, question number 5 really tends to surprise your contact, but in a great way, in a very positive way. And that question is, how can I help you? It's important to say that networking is about reciprocity. It's information gathering, but reciprocity. It is never all about us, and it's never all about just the other person. It's about both people. This person has sat down across from you, wants to help and give you this kind of information. But, if they took the time to sit down, and again, the gift of time, they took the time to sit down with us and give us this advice and information, we want to be able to give back in return. And there's so many different ways to do that. It could be newspaper articles or contact names. If someone's been really helpful, you can get them a coffee card. If you make things like arts and crafts, remember, it's just the thought that counts. And the big thought here is, how can I help you? Okay, so that's step number 3 with the 5 key questions. Step number 4 is just wrapping up the meeting. And then step number 5 is following up afterward. You got immediate follow up and you got ongoing follow up. Immediate, you just follow up, within about 24 hours. And then after that, maybe once a quarter. But the idea is following up once a quarter is keeping your network alive. I like to call it networking maintenance. Now, everything I just talked about probably sounds pretty familiar because, again, we do this stuff all the time. We just might not do it in this particular process or keep to a time limit, but these are all things that are familiar to us. So it's just process and, of course, practice. You actually have to practice it.
So from everything that you said, again, it's the concept of networking. You're saying that like if I make a meeting with one person, is that like a networking meeting, or do I have a meeting with 3 people? And also all that you have to plan in advance. Okay, I'm going to meet this person. This is what I'm going to do. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, or whatever specifically I want. And be prepared before you go with knowing exactly what you're going to do, what your objective is, and how you're going to do it.
Yep, that's right. That's right. So first of all, you'd probably be meeting one-on-one with people. If you're meeting with more than one person, it becomes like at one time, it becomes less of a networking meeting and more like just a meeting where a lot of people are sharing. Now, here's the thing: is that if you are actually all 3 of you having a discussion about whatever, it still is networking because it's information exchange. And then you can later meet up with any one of those people and pick up the conversation where you left off on any one specific topic, and then you're off and running with networking again. But if you were looking for something very specific, like in job search or career development, or even sales or business development, and you want to get understanding from one single person, you'd be a little more formal about it. So you'd actually call a networking meeting. And the thing is that you would never ever go into any networking meeting without having done research ahead of time on the people that you meet with. And the reason why is that, well, there's no reason to believe that any single person would be able to help you if you know nothing about them or their background or their organization, right? So you'd get onto LinkedIn, or maybe you get onto a company bio. The internet is a big place. If my job responsibility was to go out there and actually find people and information out there on those people, I'm here to tell you that you can find this kind of information. And once you learn about them and their interests, that's where you can develop your questions. So yes, you would do research ahead of that meeting with a single person. And yeah, you could do the same thing if you go to a networking event, because you mentioned 3 people. If you were to go to a networking event and there happens to be sometimes people send out lists of who's going to be in attendance, then you can look through that list of people and then do the same thing that I just talked about. You can do your research on LinkedIn and look them up and find out who it is that you want to be talking about. And then there you have it. You had a networking event prepared with research to talk to very specific individuals.
But basically, your 20-minute networking is based on a one-to-one meetings, one-on-one.
That's right. Yep, that's right. As opposed to something that would be about going to a networking event. But keep in mind, right, when you go to a networking event, it's rare that you're going to be standing and talking with 3 people at one time. I mean, if you're looking for information, when we go to a social event, sometimes, yeah, one person comes over and you're having a chit chat and someone sees you from across the room and wants to come over and say hi as well, in which case now there's going to be 3 of us in the discussion. But again, it's just information exchange, so that is actually networking. But if you want to be formal and get something specific out of it, one-on-one.
I like that one-on-one. For me, that would be so much more comfortable than being in a group. It's just not my comfort zone. But I
Yeah,
yeah,
me too, actually. I think.
yeah. So changing my perception of networking being this huge multi people, like a lot of people there, then from one to one, I can actually say, okay, yeah, I can do networking. And I think we all do it, but when we do it focused the way you just described, that could be a total life changer. So you mentioned that networking specifically this book is for people who want to find a job. So I'm sure you focus it on that, and maybe you can give us a little nugget specifically for those people. But I just realized as you were saying it, I used to sell real estate. And statistically, what you were saying about jobs, that most of the jobs, like 80% of the jobs, are not posted and are really from networking. And with real estate, it's the same thing. If you're looking for a good property, 80% of the good deals that you really want to look will come from networking. And weirdly enough, it will not be posted. And 20% is what you find on the market, on the MLS. So
Right.
it's really across the board. But for you, you did something really difficult for a lot of people who are very struggling to become a member of the actors union, like SAG and AFTRA. And uh,
Yeah.
was that through networking? Is that what helped you do that too?
Yep, that was definitely part of it. Again, I was an introvert, and when I was school getting my theater arts degree, it was pressed upon us. You got to go out there and network. You got to go and network. But what was that? How do you do that? No one really had anything to offer when it came to that, and it just turned out that when I moved to New York, I didn't know anybody, and an uncle that was in Colorado said, "Hey, I had this waitress once, and I think she was like an opera singer." And I said, "Oh, I'd love to talk to her. I don't know what I'm doing." And then that led to a roommate, and then that roommate led to a job, and then from there I met some people that got into theater arts, and from the theater arts that led to the agencies. And it all just happened through meeting people. I didn't look at back in at that time. There really weren't posts. There were trade
Right.
papers, and you could kind of find some things in here. So my entire theatrical career began through networking. And at the same time, when I got into the business side of things, well, it was my roommate that introduced me to an agency that got me into my first day job. And then every day job after that happened through people that I knew. So all of it, and at the time, I didn't really realize that was what was happening. It's only now that I have retrospect and I can look back and go, "Oh, that's what I was doing." And that's when I realized, gosh, this networking thing is really just about information exchange and then meeting people and doing something with the information. But yeah, that's how I got my agent. That's how I got all my day jobs. And quite frankly, it's how I got all the way up to this point where I wrote these books with my co-author.
So if someone wants to get a job and actually and they're already doing networking, they're just maybe not utilizing it, getting a copy of your book, what would that help them? I know that you have those 5 steps in there, but how would that help them get a job through networking as opposed to, okay, great, I'll go out and meet people and talk,
Right. First, it'll redefine what networking is to you, and
right?
then it'll simplify what networking really is, and how to actually do it. Go through the steps, and there's a lot of explanation behind it about why the steps work the way they do and why they're important. There are lots of stories in the books as well that help you get a perspective on what a good meeting and a bad meeting look like. Because when we read the bad meetings, you can understand very quickly, oops, these are kind of things that I've been doing. And then you read the good meetings and then you go, oh, those are some of the good things I'm doing. And here are the other things to correct the bad stuff. So it shows you an entire process, but also just helps you look at networking in a completely different way. It takes away the mystery of it and it makes it more like, this thing I was talking about earlier, just a regular everyday thing that we actually do.
So that sounds like it would be really helpful for everyone. Where do they get that? Do they just go to my favorite now website of 20mn.com? It's my favorite because it's so easy to remember it.
Thank you. Yeah, you can get information. You won't get the books through the 20mnm.com site, but you can find it on Amazon. You can get it through the Kindle app. You can get it Barnes and Noble. You can get it on iTunes, and actually on my website, that's nathanaperez.com. You can get the audiobook. The audiobook is there, but you can also order it from bookstores too.
So pretty much you're saying that you can get it almost anywhere. Is there any place you cannot get it?
That's a great question. No, there is no place that you can't get it. At the very least, you can just order it from your bookstore.
So yeah, I think I was gonna say, is there such a thing as a bad meeting? And when you
Yes.
meet what what would be a bad meeting?
Oh, a bad meeting is when you go into a meeting unprepared.
Mhm.
It can be the absolute worst. The three biggest mistakes that are made in networking meetings is that there's no agenda, that you're taking too much time, and that you don't help. Okay, that you don't help in return. But when people come into meeting, and this still happens to me, um, people will come to the meeting, sit down, be perfectly happy to be there, have a cup of coffee and a smile. This can be over video or in person, and start waiting for me to ask questions as though it's an interview, right? But here's the thing is that that person has called a meeting with me believing that I can help them, yet they're waiting for me to start asking questions in order to figure out how to help them. No, that's not it. That puts everything on the other person, and it shows that you don't run a good meeting. And that gets in the way of those people, of your contact introducing you to new people because you haven't run a good meeting. That's the impression that you leave. That if they introduce you to someone else, that's how it's going to go. So people come in with no agenda, no research, and an agenda is a planned conversation, right? And when people come in without a plan of conversation, it tends to go all over the place, and that doesn't leave a good impression. And then, of course, it takes too much time. Time tends to be the deciding factor when it comes to networking requests. It's time. So if you've ever had a fear that, oh gosh, nobody's going to want to network with me, the reason people are reluctant is because time is not used wisely. Hey, Tippy, I just need 20 or 30 of your minutes. And then the next thing you know, it's an hour. Who really has an hour? That happens once, twice. People tend to feel burned and then they want to say no. So it takes too much time. We have to be respectful and honor their time, our time too. And when you take an hour-long networking meeting and you really think about what it is that you end up talking about with one another, that can all be done inside of 20 minutes, which is the purpose of the book and the way that we constructed it this way. Um, but then, and then the last thing that I had said was not helping in return, reciprocity. Now, that's not an error. It's not a mistake. It's nothing really bad. It's just that we have to remember that this networking thing is about relationship building, and the crime of take without ever giving anything back. Well, you might have had a great meeting that's probably going to be your last one with that person, and they might introduce you to somebody, but that's probably going to be the last one with that person. But when we ask how we can help in return of help, in return for help, that really begins to expand your network, and it keeps that network alive over time, so that you can always return for more information with those people. So again, it's not something that goes wrong or is bad, but it's something that you can take advantage of that's going to help you and the other person going down the road.
Yeah, I think that's a really big one. So, and we've gotten a lot of tips on how to do a meeting, how to plan, and how not to not to walk into a meeting, which is also really important. But can you give specifically someone that's looking for a job something to take away with them after they listen to us now, that they can say, I learned something that I'm going to do today because I want to get a job or I want to get a better job?
Sure, sure. Okay, so first I'm going to reestablish some things, right? It's got to be respectful of time. Make sure you do research on that person. Formulate your background. That's a really, really big thing. You got to make sure that you're talking about your background in a way that helps people understand you. But here's the bigger takeaway now. You want to be able to do your research in a way that's going to allow you to be strategic. So you figure out who you want to talk to. I'm often asked, is there a priority of who should we really be networking with?
You just really
The answer is,
literally, as you were saying that, I was typing, how do I find the person I want to network with? And you're saying, that's like you're reading my mind. Go ahead. Yes. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
yeah, yeah, that's it. You can, the thing is that it's not, sometimes we believe there are these, special people out there. They're the real ones. But, and that's true. There are people out there who know other people and know stuff. But the truth also is that there are people out there who have information that we do not already have. And that information could do the same thing that we believe the special people could do. So what I would say is don't worry so much about who it is to be networking with. What I would say is do something with the information that you are given. So if we were going to prioritize, you would start with people close to you, right? Look at it as concentric circles that go outward. So the people that are closest to you could start with family members. Remember, it's family. You tend to get more information from family than just like a complete stranger. So family members, and then you go out to your friends ring, and then from there you go to colleagues and peers, and then maybe out from there you go to former colleagues and peers, and then you go out from there and you go complete strangers. So that's an approach, but the truth is also you could just go straight out to complete strangers depending on the circumstances and what you're looking for. But that's how you would go about finding those people. And once you find the people, you develop your questions for each of those people, and you get your networking meeting, and then you go from there. Because each piece of information that you get is going to kind of slightly alter your path that you were paving for yourself, and take you in the direction that you really want to go.
Hmm, that sounds interesting. I don't think I would want to go to my family members to network, but everything else would definitely work. Um,
Right.
so let's say I identify someone that I definitely want to talk to because I want a job. I work for this big company and I identify this senior employee, and not senior, junior employee that I think I would love to network with. How do you set up an appointment with someone that you've never met and approach how you approach them? Like, hey, you, can we network? It's
Yeah, that'd be kind of out of the blue, right? Kind of
yeah.
a little strange, a little like, so we'll take you and I as an example. You work at a radio station, and I'm someone who's at the radio station, and I know a little bit about you. And so I did a little research, and I understand how much radio and how much podcasting you've done. And I see you in the cafeteria, and I come up to you and say, "Hey, hi, Tippy. My name is Nathan, and I was reading your bio, and I noticed that you have specific experience around radio broadcast and podcasting. Could I ask you like two or three questions about that? Would you mind? And what are the odds? What would you say, Tippy?"
Well, I would say sure, but
I would say just take only 20 minutes or so, and I can come over to your office, or I'll take you to. We'll have a cup of coffee, or I can call you, whatever would be easier. Would you be up for that?
yeah, I guess that's a great approach. But for me, I'm really shy, and approaching people that I don't know is very difficult. I have a
Sure.
sister that's 2 years younger than me. I usually would send her over to bring people over to me, but unfortunately, she's not with me all the time. So if you're shy to approach someone, would that something that would stay in your way? Stand in your way?
Only if you let it, because I'm one of those people. That was me. It was difficult when I first got my theatrical career going. So, we hear about the entertainment business. It's all about who you know. It's all about who you know. I mean, there's a lot of truth to that in that industry. And it was very difficult for me. And so what I had to do is pick myself up by the bootstraps and shove myself out the door and go do it. That's the key. But the thing is that once you make yourself get out there in the world and actually have these conversations, one of two things is going to happen. People are going to talk to you, or they're not going to talk to you. If they don't talk to you, no love lost. It just happens. But you got to remember too that other people are a little strange about talking with strangers as well. It's not just us that feels that way. So if you're already expecting that some people might not be so willing to talk for their own reasons, well, then so be it. Each goes their own way. If they do talk, what you're going to find is, and I think you'll find this most often, most people do want to talk. Most people are willing to talk about themselves or share things that they know, in which case that'll tell you, I did it once, let me try it again, let me try it again. And then you're kind of like in this no lose situation, because you're already expecting some folks not be willing to talk for their reasons, and the other half are the ones that are willing to talk. And that's what happened with me over the course of many years in many different industries and businesses. As you mentioned when you were talking about my background, I started in Hollywood and I coached senior executives, from big corporations. In one way, you might think that those are very, very different kinds of people to be talking with. But if I just said they're just people and we're just having conversations about things we relate about, then there really is nothing to fear in having a conversation. We're just people in the end. Does that make sense?
Makes totally sense. But in essence, what you're saying is learn how to deal with rejection first. And I think that's really the key. If someone is afraid to get a no, then you never really go anywhere. But learning how to
Right.
deal with rejection, not only for the 20-minute networking, but for anything in life, that can completely change your life if you're not so intimidated by someone rejecting you, because it's it's almost like a difference between life and death.
It could feel that way. It can feel that way, and yet it's not. It's not like you approach someone could I ask you a few questions, and they holler at you and say no and take a swing at you. It's just not going to happen. The worst that can happen is say no. The very worst that could happen is someone turn on a heel without saying anything to you and walk away. But
Yeah, pretty
th-
difficult to
then
deal with, but that's what you're saying. Learn how to deal with that. It's not a big deal.
Right, right. We can't let our feelings get away in the way of something like this. We have to learn it. Rejection, I mean, that happens sometimes. I came from an industry, 20 years. I got rejected on a regular basis per week, No, you're not
Mhm,
the right type. You're not the right for this role, whatever else. It was constant. And
mhm,
so
mhm.
anybody who's been in the arts and has to go and audition for things like this, rejection is a norm. But I think what you learn from it is that, the only thing under your control are the things that you have under your control. You can't control other people. You can only do the best you can. Once you get comfortable with that, it's not rejection anymore. You just understand that other people feel the way that they do. It might be just uncomfortable for them. That has nothing to do with us.
I actually coach people on how to deal with rejection, and I think putting them in Hollywood is a great playground to learn to handle rejection because
That's so true.
I can't think of any other industry that you're going to get more rejected than Hollywood.
Yes, yes. If you want to be practiced in rejection, yeah, hop into the Hollywood game and you'll learn this skill real quick.
Yeah, well, I know I can talk to you for another hour or two because I do have a lot more questions. Not a million, but a lot. But I did promise you that I wouldn't keep you here for the next 4 hours. So I want to thank you a lot. I think there's definitely a lot to take away for me, even the redefinition of networking and the redefinition of introvert. Those two things were already a big thing that I learned that I didn't know. And if you learn one
Oh,
thing in any
good.
conversation, you already are ahead of the game. But I think we've learned a lot in this conversation. So thank you so much for all that information. People know how to
Sure.
find you, but why don't we tell them once again where they can find you and how they can find you before we let you go?
Sure, sure. So you can find book information at 20mnm.com. That stands for 20-minute networking meeting. Or you can go to my website, that's nathanaperez.com. You can still get book information there as well. You can find the audio book there, and coaching and speaking stuff that I do. You can also find that there. And you can find me on LinkedIn. I post information around career things and networking there as well. So if you want to follow me there, you'll get lots of stuff. I've been doing quite a bit lately.
Thank you so much. It's been amazing talking to you.
Thank
I
you
wish you
too.
luck. And I definitely am looking forward to hearing from you soon again.
Oh, likewise. Thanks, Tippy. Thanks again for having me on the show.
Thank you. Enjoy your week.
You too.
Bye.
I'll talk to you soon.
Take care.